The next game is weird. I shouldn't even say game as much as I should be saying games, as in they have the same title, but are entirely different experiences. Meet Drawn to Life: The Next Chapter, released in 2009 for both the DS and this time around the Wii. So here's the thing, this type of release is not unprecedented. For example, the Pac-Man World games, they have their respective GBA counterparts, and even a game like Sonic Unleashed would receive different takes on the core game depending on what console you're playing it on. Here's the thing, usually those multi-releases have the same level, same story, same gameplay elements. These two games have none of that. They should have been named different things. Something like that wouldn't have been unprecedented either. Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Rogue both released on the same day, but for different consoles. Like, these aren't based on each other at all. In an interview with IGN near the game's release with Jeremiah and lead designer Matthew Pellicane, the latter would state that the Wii version is a prequel to the DS version. So let me get this straight. You guys made two different games, but both called them The Next Chapter. I guess that technically makes sense, right? Like, Drawn to Life: The Next Chapter is the next chapter to the first Drawn to Life game, and Drawn to Life: The Next Chapter is the next chapter of Drawn to Life: The Next Chapter. They planned it out. Genius. Well, it gets even more complicated than that. In the YouTube interview he did with the Drawn to Life speedrunning community in early 2020, Jeremiah confirmed that the Wii version was basically all THQ's idea and product, that he didn't have that much to do with it, and that the Wii version is not canon to the franchise. Joseph Tringali would also confirm in 2020 that it is not canon as well. So we have conflicting reports on whether the Wii version even exists in the Drawn to Life universe. My take on it, though, is that I'm willing to believe Jeremiah and Joseph's final word on it. It's not like when they had a partnership with THQ, they could just say, the Wii version doesn't matter, guys. So likely the prior interview Pellicane gave was PR speak. What's even more interesting, though, is that a Wii version of Drawn to Life was confirmed after the first game's success on the DS, and this was before a confirmation of a sequel on the DS at all. So my theory here is that the Wii version was designed independently by THQ and really had nothing to do with anything, but just to bolster sales, it would release alongside the DS game. Although, you know what? That still doesn't make any sense. If they were two different games, which they are, why not give them different titles so people would have a reason to buy both? It's just confusing. Parents are only gonna buy one version. My mom only bought me the DS version as a kid. There you go. There's your proof. I owned a Wii. But if you name them differently, it's like, oh, let's go. There's two games coming out. This would be like if in 2012, Nintendo released New Super Mario Bros. 2 and New Super Mario Bros. U under the same name, but the gameplay obviously is somewhat separate. Do you guys hate money? So for the sake of this video, I think we're gonna take a look at the Wii version first, even if it's not canon. A developer did say it was a prequel to the DS game, so I think it only makes sense. So let's pick up our Wiimote and nunchuck. Oh no. Yep, drawing with the Wiimote. Oops, no one really thought this one out, did they? I think in a room of corporate bigwigs, this concept sounds a lot better in their heads than it does on paper.
Oh, it's gonna be fine. The Wiimote is just like the DS because of the range of motion. It's the same thing.
The thing is, it really doesn't work. The DS touchscreen obviously works for drawing because you get direct feedback. You know exactly where your stylus lands for one, and you draw. It's not perfect, it's a cheap touchscreen after all, but it is a legitimate drawing tool. The Wii pointer has no stopping point. It's like trying to draw with your pen hovering above a paper. On top of that, holding your hand to the sensor bar is just naturally gonna be a lot more shaky no matter who you are. Now, this sort of thing was definitely not unprecedented during the Wii and DS era. There were always games like WarioWare DIY and WarioWare DIY Express, with the latter letting you play your creations one for one with the Wiimote on the TV screen. There were other games too, like Big Brain Academy and Big Brain Academy A Wii Degree, and this type of dual release continued well into the Wii U and 3DS era. The thing is though, all those examples don't really require intense precision. Drawing does. In fact, the Wii had a drawing tablet in the form of UDraw, and THQ did make a few games for that thing down the line, but it was after this game. Well, I spoke to a member from the Drawn to Life community, Guy That Exists, a very knowledgeable community member who helped me with some info for this script. I learned that the UDraw tablet was originally produced as a tablet for Drawn to Life Wii, but development on it was pushed back when it wasn't going to be ready in time. Gee, it should have just been its own separate game. So yeah, I hate to say this, but the drawing is just not workable. I wouldn't be surprised if there are artists who care more than me who can create really good art on this. I just filled in shapes and added stamps. I tried my best, okay? Actually, one really positive change to the system overall that I'm guessing was made because of the Wiimote is the addition of shapes like the Microsoft Paint tool had. This is the only drawn-to-life game with this tool. A recession happened a year before it. I don't think it's a coincidence, okay? Another unintended positive is now the stamps. You know what? This actually gave me a reason to use them. I don't think they were intended to be of a higher value, but they are to me.
The game itself, okay. It's like if you made a movie of the DS version and then made a game based off of that movie.
So like, look, most of the characters return. Mary, Joey, Mike, Farmer Brown, and obviously you're the hero. And it's all very drawn to life-ish, but it doesn't really feel like any characters are from the DS game. At the very least, they don't have the same charm. Everyone talks the same. I can't really tell any characters apart. Someone like Crazy Barks was hilarious in the first game, always spewing complete nonsense that's impossible to read. But here he's just like barking. It's kind of a soulless story, and since it's not canon, we don't really have a lot of reason to care. But to give a brief recap, objects from the city are disappearing and no one knows why, so we're exploring levels to figure it out. I'm not even simplifying it that much. That's pretty much the entire story. There are occasional cutscenes that are drawn nicely, and I did like these, but I still never once felt hooked on this game's narrative. It's pretty obvious that this game was developed independently of the main franchise, and if you need more proof, look at everything else. The village is 2D, the characters are now 3D instead of being sprites, the menus and world sizes. It honestly feels like the SpongeBob game, but Guy That Exists as well confirmed that the teams had little to no overlap, so potentially this could just be because of whatever THQ's formula was, although that's only a theory of his. So when I was saying this was like a game of a movie of drawn to life, I wasn't even wrong. That's what this is. It's an interpretation of drawn to life from people who didn't write for Drawn to Life. This game is nothing more than official fan fiction, and I could see why the original developers distanced themselves far from the product. But I've been rambling as much as Crazy Barks here. Let's talk about the game.
This is weird to say, but this game's actually not half bad. It's only about 4/10 bad.
The biggest thing I hate about this game is the village. Who in God's name thought it was a good idea to have this be a giant 2D stretch of land? It takes forever to get from point A to point B. You have to talk to people between each level to trigger the next one, which is kind of like the first game to be fair. And while the first village still took a while to get around, it was nowhere near this level of monotony. Sometimes I talk to someone thinking I triggered the next level to start, but then I realized that wasn't the trigger and I have to take a 5-minute trek to get back. Drawn to Life SpongeBob had a similar village, but it was much smaller and had exits on both sides. Not to mention that one area was entirely optional and there really weren't that many intermissions between the levels. On top of that, this game has so many load screens and some of them are super long. The game loads for every drawing, every level entrance if you look at it funny, and sometimes it just loads in the middle of gameplay.
Wait, sorry, I actually wasn't done loading.
Gameplay-wise, this mainly feels like Drawn to Life SpongeBob, as I alluded to, but there's one addition that I think was pure genius, which is drawing platforms on the fly. For one, this works with the control scheme quite well because your drawing can just be a squiggly line and doesn't require precision. This is one of my favorite additions of not only this game, but the entire franchise, and it really opens the gameplay up to a lot of unique puzzles that the previous games just didn't have. I complained in the first game how the drawing sort of just felt like an empty box that didn't have that much to do with what you drew, and this does a lot to fix that problem I had. The gameplay is much more interactive this way as well, although with the Wii sensor bar, the moments that require accuracy sometimes made me look like I passed out drunk when I tried to do them. Besides that, the gameplay is par for the course. It's a platformer with the occasional vehicle. We've heard this before, haven't we? This time around, you could draw a lot more than usual to the backgrounds of your levels, and this is probably the highest number of drawings for the entire franchise up to this point. It's a tragedy they did this on the Wii, not even just a simple tragedy. We're talking Shakespearean tragedy. Like, we have all these cool interactions with the world, but all I can do is like, okay, I'm tasked with drawing a rat. I'll draw a circle with a face on it. One problem with this game, and this only happened in the last world for me, was sometimes I would skip a required canvas without even realizing it. I got like halfway through a level once and there were no platforms. I reset the level thinking I missed the canvas somewhere in that area, but I couldn't find it. Turns out this was actually a canvas I missed from a prior level. And honestly, it's like, why is that even possible? In the DS games, normally there would be a canvas followed by an example of how to execute what you just drew. That is good game design. Here, because the game is designed like Sonic CD with millions of paths, you can easily screw yourself just by playing the level. And speaking of bad game design, one time I got soft locked when I got stuck on a corner. I pressed buttons for like 5 minutes, but no, I mean, I was stuck. I had to restart the whole level, and then, because I missed the jump again, I had to do it all over 3 times. Well, according to Guy That Exists and even various interviews I found online, this game did have a pretty heavy development crunch on it. I guess starting development on a console game meant to release the same day as a handheld game game is probably not in your best interest if you're a game company. While Drawn to Life Next Chapter on Wii has a lot in common with the SpongeBob game, it still has some elements from the first game. For example, we're back to getting world-exclusive power-ups. These include a monkey tail, claws, return of wings, a BB gun, and ice skates. What this game doesn't take from either game, though, are collectibles. Like, yeah, there are stamps, pallets, stuff like that, but for one, the game doesn't label them onto the levels, so you never know how many you have to get or could be missing. And for two, there's no traditional collectibles, as in no villagers and no goo. But you know what? For the latter, that's actually a good thing. Visually, this game looks kind of cheap. I'm not crazy about the 3D models of the characters. They look creepy and feel like such a departure from the original game that it added to my lack of connection with the story. The graphics also gave me a headache. There were so many layers that sometimes I had no idea what was in the foreground and what was in the background. I think this game is a glitch in the Matrix and was meant to come out on the Nintendo 3DS.
Oh yes, Mr. President, someone has figured this out. This is not a drill. We need to get back to the White House right now, okay?
Towards the end of the game, we learned that one of the villagers named Serki is Wilfrey's wife and is carrying on his life mission of being a horrible person. Serki brings him back to life, and gee, who would have ever guessed the one villager who is a new character to this game exclusively would be evil? What's next? They're gonna say, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids. The fight against a revived Wilfrey is one of 2 boss fights in the entire game. What a low amount. The final level of the worlds were normally just regular levels, with the Shadow Realm ending in a 3-phase boss fight with whatever this abomination is. I had zero clue how to fight Wilfrey. This game doesn't make it clear at all. At first I thought you had to draw on these areas to attack this blob, but actually you have to punch the floating Wilfrey until he goes down to one of the squares, then draw a line, then punch from that platform. It's as annoying as it sounds, and even when I knew what I was doing, it still took me 20 minutes to finish. As for the idea that this is supposed to lead into the Nintendo DS game, they didn't retroactively try to shoehorn this plot in. Nope, not at all. At the end of the game, you don't get any cutscenes, just a festival with credits you can activate on your own accord whenever you get bored of talking to the same 5 NPCs. I guess the biggest argument for this game leading into the DS title is explaining how Wilfrey came back to life, but honestly, it's a huge stretch. That being said, it's not a bad game. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece though either. It's very far from that. It's flawed and honestly pretty uninspired, but maybe I'd say it's better than Drawn to Life SpongeBob.
Yeah, I went there. So what?
There's really nothing in the post-game, but independent of the entire story, there are 4 minigames under the moniker Raposa Sports. 3 of them are the exact same thing, and the other is volleyball, and they're all generic flash games that I don't even know why they bothered adding to the package. You can draw your characters in sports equipment though. Yep, let's add this to the worst drawing game in the series. Good idea. These games could have been coded on a refrigerator.